What kind of son chooses a party over his own mother's funeral? The question burned in my chest as I stood by the kitchen window, staring at the rain-slick street where Ethan's car had just pulled up. It had been 6 months since I buried my mother, 6 months since my son, my only child, failed to show up at her graveside. I could still see the empty space where he should have been, the gap in the small crowd of mourners as the priest's words dissolved into the cold November wind. He hadn't even called to explain. Just a text hours later. Sorry, Mom, got caught up. Talk soon. Caught up. At his wife's birthday party, no less. A lavish affair with champagne and laughter, while I stood alone, clutching the urn of the woman who raised us both. Now here he was, standing on my porch, his silhouette blurred through the glass, looking like a stranger. I opened the door, and the air between us crackled with unspoken accusations. Ethan stepped inside, shaking rain from his coat. His eyes, those same hazel eyes I'd loved since he was a boy, wouldn't meet mine. Mom, he started, his voice low, I need to talk to you. I crossed my arms, the weight of 6 months' silence pressing down. Talk. Now you want to talk? Where were you when Grandma's ashes were scattered? When I needed you? He flinched, but I didn't stop. You chose cake and candles over her, Ethan. Over me. His wife, Lila, wasn't with him, I noticed. She was probably back at their perfect suburban house, planning another event I wouldn't be invited to. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. It's not what you think, he said. There's stuff you don't know. I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. Oh, I know plenty. I know you didn't care enough to show up. He looked up then, and something in his expression, a flicker of pain, maybe regret, made me pause. Mom, I'm in trouble, he said. Big trouble. I need your help. My heart stuttered. Trouble? Ethan, my golden boy, the one who'd always landed on his feet? I wanted to slam the door on him, to let him stew in whatever mess he'd made. But he was still my son. I gestured to the couch, and he sat, shoulders slumped, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. What kind of trouble? I asked, my voice softer now, though I hated myself for it. He took a deep breath, and the story spilled out. Debts, bad investments, a failing business. He and Lila were drowning, he said. They could lose their house, their car, everything. I need a loan, he admitted, his voice breaking, just to get us through. I stared at him, my mind reeling. A loan? After everything? He was here for money? The audacity stung, but beneath it, I felt something else, curiosity. Why now? Why me? My mother's voice echoed in my head. Family's family. Clara, no matter how bad it gets. But she'd also taught me to see through excuses, to spot the cracks in a story. Ethan wasn't telling me everything. I could feel it. Why didn't you come to the funeral? I asked, cutting through his plea. He froze, his mouth half open, like he hadn't expected the question. It's complicated, he mumbled. Complicated. That word again. I leaned forward, my voice steady. Uncomplicated, Ethan. Right now. He shifted, his hands twisting in his lap. Lila, she didn't want me to go, he said finally. She said it was a bad day, that her birthday was important, that Grandma would have understood. I felt a hot spike of anger. Lila, of course. The woman who'd swept into our lives 5 years ago, all charm and ambition, and slowly pushed me to the edges. But Ethan wasn't done. It wasn't just that, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. There was something else. Something Grandma told me before she died. My breath caught. My mother? What could she have told him that would keep him from her funeral? I leaned closer, the room shrinking around us. What did she say? I asked, my heart pounding. Ethan's eyes darted to the floor. She said there was a letter for you, about the family. Something she didn't want you to know until after she was gone. A letter? My mother had been sharp as a tack until her final days, her secrets locked tight behind her warm smile. I thought I'd known everything about her, her recipes, her stories, her regrets. But a letter? Where is it? I demanded. Ethan swallowed hard. I don't know. I looked for it after, but I couldn't find it. I thought maybe you had it. I shook my head, my mind racing. A letter. A secret. And Ethan, standing here, begging for money while holding back pieces of the truth. I didn't trust him, not fully, but I couldn't turn him away. Not yet. I stood, pacing the room, the rain drumming harder against the windows. "You want my help?" I said. "Then you're going to tell me everything. No more half-truths. And we're going to find that letter." Ethan nodded, relief flickering across his face, but I wasn't done. "And Lila," I added, my voice sharp, "she's part of this, isn't she? Don't lie to me." He didn't answer, but his silence was enough. Something was wrong, deeper than debts or missed funerals. I could feel it, like a storm gathering strength. My mother's voice whispered again, "Family's family, Clara. But what kind of family hides secrets that tear them apart?" I didn't know yet, but I was going to find out. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the weight of Ethan's words still heavy in my chest. He'd slept on the couch, his coat draped over him like a shield. I hadn't offered him a blanket. Part of me wanted him to feel the cold, to carry some of the discomfort I'd borne alone at my mother's funeral. But as I watched him stir, his face creased with exhaustion, I softened. He was still my boy, no matter how far he drifted. I poured 2 mugs of coffee and sat across from him, the silence thick between us. "Tell me about the letter," I said, my voice steady but firm. He rubbed his eyes, hesitating, and I braced myself for another vague excuse. Instead, he surprised me. "Grandma called me a week before she died," he said. "She was different, scared almost. She said she'd written something for you, something about Dad. My father, the man who'd left when I was 10, a ghost in our family's story. My mother rarely spoke of him, and when she did, it was with a tightness in her voice, like she was guarding a wound. I'd long since stopped asking. But now, Ethan's words cracked open a door I thought was sealed shut. "What about Dad?" I asked, my pulse quickening. Ethan shook his head. "She wouldn't say much, just that it was important and that you needed to read it after she was gone. She told me to make sure you got it." His voice faltered. "But then Lila, she said it wasn't a good time, that we had enough going on." I clenched my mug, the heat biting my palms. Lila again. Always Lila. I stood, needing to move, to shake off the anger bubbling up. "So, you just listened to her? Ignored your grandmother's dying wish because Lila said so?" Ethan's face reddened, but he didn't look away. "It wasn't like that, Mom. I wanted to come. I did. But Lila was freaking out about her birthday, about keeping things normal for once. And I didn't want to fight with her." I stared at him, my son, my flesh and blood, choosing his wife's whims over his family's legacy. But there was something in his eyes, guilt, yes, but also fear. He was holding back. "What aren't you telling me, Ethan?" I pressed. He opened his mouth, then closed it, like he was wrestling with a truth too heavy to speak. Before he could answer, the doorbell rang, sharp and jarring. I froze, my instincts prickling. Ethan's head snapped up, his face paling. "Who's that?" I asked, but he was already on his feet, moving toward the door like a man bracing for a storm. I followed, my heart thudding. When he opened the door, there she was, Lila. Her blonde hair was pulled back, her designer coat pristine despite the drizzle outside. She didn't smile, didn't even look at me. "Ethan," she said, her voice clipped, "we need to talk. Now." I stepped forward, my anger flaring. "No, Lila, you're my house. You don't get to make demands." Her eyes flicked to me, cold and calculating, and for the first time, I saw her not as my son's wife, but as something else, someone who'd orchestrated more than I realized. Ethan stood between us, his hands raised like a referee. "Mom, please, let me handle this." But I wasn't backing down. "Handle what, Ethan? What's going on?" Lila's lips tightened, and she shot him a look that could have cut glass. "Tell her," she said, her voice low, "or I will." My stomach dropped. "Tell me what?" Ethan turned to me, his face a mask of anguish. "Mom, the business, it's not just failing. It's gone. We're broke. And Lila, she made some deals to try to save it. Bad deals." I stared at him, the pieces falling into place. The missed funeral, the secrets, the letter. It was all connected. But how? And why was Lila so desperate to keep Ethan quiet? I turned to her, my voice icy. "What deals, Lila? What did you do?" She didn't flinch, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Nothing you need to worry about, Clara," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. This is between me and Ethan. I stepped closer, my mother's strength rising in me. No, this is my family. And if there's a letter, a secret, anything that involves my mother or my son, I deserve to know. Lila's facade cracked just for a moment, and I saw something raw. Fear, maybe, or guilt. Fine, she said, her voice sharp. You want the truth? Ask Ethan about the money he borrowed. From who? I turned to my son, my heart sinking. Ethan. He looked away, his hands shaking. It's complicated, he whispered again. That word. I hated it. I grabbed my coat, my mind racing. We're going to Mom's house, I said. If there's a letter, it's there. And we're finding it. All of us. Ethan hesitated, but Lila's eyes narrowed, like she was calculating her next move. You don't need to do this, Clara, she said. But I was already out the door, the rain cold against my face. They followed, reluctant, and as we drove to my mother's old house, the tension in the car was suffocating. I didn't know what we'd find, but I knew one thing. The truth was buried somewhere in that house, and I wasn't leaving without it. The drive to my mother's house felt like a descent into the past. The old Victorian loomed at the end of the street, its paint peeling, its windows dark like eyes that had seen too much. I hadn't been back since the funeral, since I'd packed up her things and locked the door on memories I wasn't ready to face. Now, with Ethan and Lila in the back seat, the silence was a living thing, pressing against us. I glanced at Ethan in the rearview mirror. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the rain-streaked window. Lila sat beside him, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. What deals had she made? What money had Ethan borrowed? And why did it feel like my mother's letter held the key to it all? We stepped inside, the air musty and heavy with the scent of old books and lavender, my mother's scent. I flicked on a lamp, casting long shadows across the living room. Where do we start? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer right away, my eyes scanning the familiar space. The oak bookshelf, the worn armchair, the mantel where favorite photos still stood. Somewhere in this house was a letter, a secret she'd entrusted to Ethan. I turned to him. You said she told you about it. Did she say where she kept it? He shook his head, his hands stuffed in his pockets. She just said it was for you, that it was personal. Lila snorted, breaking the tension like a snapped wire. Personal? It's probably just some sentimental nonsense. You're wasting your time, Clara. I spun on her, my patience fraying. If it's nonsense, why are you so nervous? What are you afraid we'll find? Her eyes widened, just for a second, before she masked it with a smirk. I'm not afraid of anything, she said, but her voice trembled at the edges. I didn't believe her. I turned to Ethan. Start in her bedroom. I'll check the study. He nodded, avoiding Lila's gaze, and headed upstairs. Lila lingered, watching me like a hawk. I ignored her and moved to the study, my mother's sanctuary. The desk was cluttered with papers, old receipts, and a journal I hadn't noticed before. I opened it, my fingers trembling as I flipped through pages of her neat handwriting. Recipes, grocery lists, snippets of poetry. Then, tucked between the pages, I found it, a sealed envelope with my name written in her familiar cursive. My heart stopped. This was it. I tore it open, my eyes scanning the words, and the world tilted. Clara, my darling, it began, there are things I should have told you long ago, about your father, about our family. She wrote of my father's gambling, his debts, how he'd left to protect us from the men he owed. Men who never stopped looking. My breath caught as I read the final line. They're still out there, Clara, and they know about Ethan. I clutched the letter, my mind racing. Ethan, the money he'd borrowed, the deals Lila had made. It wasn't just a failing business. My son was tangled in something dangerous, something tied to my father's past. I heard footsteps and turned to see Ethan in the doorway, his face pale. Mom, what's wrong? He asked. I held up the letter, my voice shaking. Did you know? About Grandpa? About the people he owed? Ethan's eyes widened, and he took a step back, like I'd struck him. I didn't know all of it, he stammered. Lila handled the details. She said she had it under control. Lila, I stormed past him, the letter crumpled in my hand, and found her in the living room, flipping through a photo album like she owned the place. "What did you do?" I demanded, thrusting the letter at her. "Who did you borrow money from?" She froze, her fingers tightening on the album. "You don't understand," she said, her voice low. "We were desperate. The business was collapsing. I found someone who could help." I stepped closer, my voice a hiss. "Who, Lila? Who did you drag my son to?" She met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw real fear. "They're not good people," she whispered. "But they were our only option." Before I could respond, Ethan's phone buzzed, loud and insistent. He pulled it out, his face draining of color. "It's them," he said, his voice barely audible. "They want to meet. Tonight." My heart pounded as I grabbed the phone, reading the message, midnight. "Old warehouse on Pike Street. Bring the money." I looked at Ethan, then Lila, the letter burning in my hand. This wasn't just about a loan. This was my father's legacy, a debt that had followed us across decades. And now my son was caught in its grip. "We're going," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at me. "All of us. And we're ending this." The warehouse on Pike Street loomed like a forgotten relic, its rusted walls glinting under the moonlight. Rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. I drove, my hands tight on the wheel, Ethan silent beside me, Lila in the back seat, her usual confidence replaced by a tense stillness. The letter was tucked in my coat pocket, its words looping in my mind. "They're still out there, Clara, and they know about Ethan." My mother had known something, had tried to warn me, but I'd been too wrapped up in my grief to see it. Now, we were walking into the lion's den, and I wasn't sure we'd walk out. We stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under our feet. The warehouse door was ajar, a sliver of yellow light spilling out. Ethan hesitated, his breath visible in the chilly air. "Mom, you don't have to do this," he said, his voice low. "This is my mess." I turned to him, my heart aching at the fear in his eyes. "You're my son," I said simply. "Your messes are mine." Lila said nothing, her gaze fixed on the door, like she was bracing for something she'd known was coming. I pushed past them, leading the way, the letter a weight against my chest. Inside, the warehouse was a cavern of shadows, lit by a single flickering bulb. Two men stood waiting, one lean and wiry, the other broad, his face scarred and unreadable. The lean one stepped forward, a smirk playing on his lips. "Ethan," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "You brought company." His eyes flicked to me, then Lila, sizing us up. "Who are they?" I stepped forward, my voice steady. "I'm his mother, and I know about the death. About my father." The scarred man's eyes narrowed, and I felt a chill. "Your father," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "He left quite a legacy." Ethan's hand brushed mine, a silent plea to stay calm, but I was done playing nice. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cutting through the tension. The lean man laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "What we're owed. Your boy here borrowed 50 grand to save his little business. And Lila," he glanced at her, "promised to deliver." Lila's face paled, and I turned to her, my anger flaring. "Promise what?" I demanded. She wouldn't meet my eyes, her hands twisting together. The scar man answered for her. "Information," he said, "about your family, about a certain letter." My blood ran cold. The letter. They knew about it. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing the envelope, but I didn't pull it out. "What do you want with it?" I asked, stalling, my mind racing for a way out. The lean man stepped closer, his smirk on. "Your father owed us more than money, lady. He had secrets, names, deals that we need. That letter's got answers." I glanced at Ethan, his face a mask of guilt, and Lila, who looked like she might bolt. She'd known. She'd sold us out to save their failing empire. Before I could speak, Lila broke, her voice shrill. I didn't have a choice. They were going to ruin us. Ethan grabbed her arm, his voice hoarse. "You didn't tell me it was them, Lila. You said it was just a loan." The scar man laughed, a low rumble. "She lied to you, kid. And now you're all here." He pulled a gun from his jacket, casual, like it was an afterthought. My heart stopped, but I stepped in front of Ethan, my mother's strength surging through me. "You're not getting the letter," I said, my voice steady. And you're not touching my son? The lean man raised an eyebrow, amused. Brave, but stupid. He nodded to the scarred man, who advanced, the gun steady in his hand. Time slowed, the air thick with the weight of our choices. Ethan's hand tightened on my arm, and Lila let out a choked sob. I had to think fast. The letter was my only leverage, but giving it up could mean losing everything. I pulled it from my pocket, holding it up, the envelope trembling in my hand. This what you want? I asked, my voice loud in the silence. Then tell me why. Tell me what my father did. The scarred man paused, his eyes flicking to the letter. Your old man was a runner, he said. Moved cash, drugs, whatever we needed. But he got greedy, tried to cut us out, left us with nothing but a list of names he swore he'd burn. My father, a criminal? The man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd sung me to sleep? It didn't fit, but the letter's words burned in my mind. He left to protect us. Maybe this was why. I took a step back, closer to Ethan, my mind racing. The letter doesn't have your names. I lied, praying they'd buy it. It's just family stuff. The lean man's eyes narrowed, but before he could speak, Lila lunged forward, snatching the letter from my hand. I'll give it to them, she screamed, her voice breaking. I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't let them hurt us. Ethan grabbed for her, but she was too fast, thrusting the letter toward the scarred man. My heart sank as he took it, his fingers tearing into the envelope. This was it. The truth, my mother's last gift in the hands of monsters. The warehouse seemed to shrink as the scarred man unfolded the letter, his eyes scanning my mother's words. My heart pounded, each beat a countdown to whatever came next. Ethan stood frozen, his eyes locked on Lila, betrayal written across his face. She'd handed over our family's secrets, our last connection to my mother, to save herself. I wanted to scream, to tear the letter from the man's hands, but the gun in his grip kept me still. The lean man watched, his smirk back like he was enjoying the chaos. Read it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Tell me what you think you're getting. I needed time, needed to understand what they wanted, what my father had done. The scarred man's eyes flicked up, his expression unreadable. Your old man, he said, his voice low, thought he could outsmart us. Hit a list of our clients, our routes. Said he'd destroy it if we came after him. He held up the letter, shaking it. This better have what we need. We're your boys and deeper than you think. Ethan's breath hitched, and I reached for his hand, squeezing it. Mom, he whispered, I didn't know it was this bad. I wanted to believe him, but Lila's betrayal hung between us, a wound that wouldn't close. She stood apart, her face pale, her eyes darting to the exit like she could run from this. I took a step forward, my voice sharp. If my father hid something, it's not in that letter. It's just personal, about why he left. The scarred man's eyes narrowed, and he handed the letter to the lean man, who skimmed it, his smirk fading. She's right, he said, tossing it to the ground. It's just family drama, nothing we can use. Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. The scarred man stepped closer, the gun steady. Then you're useless to us, he said, his voice cold. And we don't like loose ends. My stomach dropped. This wasn't about the letter anymore. It was about power, about silencing anyone who knew too much. Ethan moved in front of me, his voice shaking but firm. Leave her out of this. This is my debt. The scarred man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the empty warehouse. You think you're calling the shots, kid? Your wife sold you out, and now you're all here. Lila sobbed, her hands covering her face. I'm sorry, she choked out. I thought I could fix it. I wanted to hate her, to blame her for everything, but I saw the fear in her eyes, the weight of her mistakes. She wasn't a villain, just a woman who'd made a terrible choice. I scanned the warehouse, my mind racing for a way out. The door was too far, the men too close. But then I saw it, a rusted fire alarm on the wall, half hidden in the shadows. If I could reach it, maybe the noise would draw attention, give us a chance to run. I edged toward it, keeping my movements slow, my eyes on the scarred man. You don't need to do this, I said, my voice calm, buying time. We don't know anything. Let us go, and we'll disappear. The lean man snorted. Disappear? Like your father tried to? He stepped closer, his eyes glinting with malice. You're not going anywhere. I was inches from the alarm now, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. Ethan caught my eye, and I saw a flicker of understanding. He stepped forward, drawing their attention. What if I can find the list? He said, his voice desperate. I know where Grandpa kept his things. I can get it for you. The scarred man tilted his head, interested, but the lean man wasn't buying it. You're stalling, he said, raising the gun. That was my moment. I lunged, yanking the alarm's lever. A shrill wail filled the warehouse, lights flashing red. The men cursed, startled, and I grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward the door. Lila hesitated, then ran after us, the men shouting behind. We burst into the night, the rain starting again, cold and sharp against my skin. We didn't stop, sprinting to the car, my breath ragged. I slid behind the wheel, Ethan and Lila piling in, and peeled out, the warehouse shrinking in the rearview mirror. My hands shook, but I kept driving, the letter's words echoing in my mind. We weren't safe yet, but we were alive. And that was enough for now. I glanced at Ethan, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear and guilt. We need to talk, I said, my voice low. All of us. No more secrets. He nodded, and for the first time, I saw my son, not the man who'd chosen a party over a funeral, but the boy who needed his mother. The car hummed along the dark highway, the rain a steady drumbeat against the windshield. Ethan sat beside me, his hands clenched in his lap, while Lila huddled in the back seat, her face buried in her hands. The wail of the fire alarm still rang in my ears, a reminder of how close we'd come to losing everything. My mother's letter, now crumpled on the floor of the warehouse, had been our shield and our curse. I didn't know if those men would come after us, but I knew we couldn't go back to the life we'd had before. Not after tonight. I glanced at Ethan, his profile sharp in the dim light. Start talking, I said, my voice low but firm. No more lies. What did you know about those men? Ethan swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. I didn't know who they were at first, he said. Lila found them. She said they could help with the business, get us out of debt. I thought it was just a loan. He paused, his voice breaking. But then they started asking about Grandpa, about you. I didn't know what they wanted until tonight. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles white. And you didn't think to tell me? To warn me? He shook his head, tears glinting in his eyes. I was scared, Mom. I thought I could handle it. Lila's voice came from the back seat, small and broken. It's my fault, she said. I thought I could control it. They promised to save the business if I gave them information. I didn't know it was about your dad. I wanted to believe her, to see her as the scared young woman she sounded like, but anger burned too hot. You sold us out, I said, my voice shaking. You gave them my mother's letter, our family's secrets. She sobbed, and Ethan reached back, touching her hand. She didn't mean for this to happen, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I could see the cracks in their marriage, the weight of choices pulling them apart. We pulled into a motel lot, the neon sign flickering in the rain. I needed somewhere safe to think, to plan. Inside the cramped room, we sat on the edge of the bed, the air thick with tension. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old photos of my mother, her smile a reminder of the strength I needed now. We can't run forever, I said, looking at Ethan. Those men, they'll find us unless we end this. He nodded, his face pale. What do we do? He asked. I took a deep breath, my mother's words echoing. Family's family, Clara. We find out what my father hid, I said, and we use it to protect ourselves. The next morning, we drove back to my mother's house, the only place I could think to look. The letter was gone, but my father's past wasn't. We tore through the attic, pulling out dusty boxes, old journals, anything that might hold answers. Ethan found a locked metal box under a pile of blankets, its surface scratched and heavy. This could be it, he said, his voice hopeful. I pried it open with a crowbar, my hands shaking. Inside was a notebook, its pages yellowed, filled with names, dates, and addresses, my father's handwriting. A list, the one those men wanted. I read the first few lines, my heart sinking. It was a record of deals, clients, money moved through shadows. My father hadn't just been a gambler. He'd been part of something bigger, something dangerous. Lila stood in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Is that what they're looking for?" she asked. I nodded, closing the notebook. "This is our leverage," I said. "But we're not giving it to them. We're going to the police." Ethan's face paled. "Mom, that could make things worse. What if they come after us?" I met his eyes, my voice steady. "They're already after us, Ethan. This ends on our terms." Lila stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I can help," she said. "I know some of their contacts. I can tell the police everything." I looked at her, searching for the truth in her eyes. For the first time, I saw not the woman who'd betrayed us, but someone trying to make things right. We spent the day sorting through the notebook, piecing together my father's life. Each page was a revelation, a glimpse into a man I'd never known. But it was also a map, a way to dismantle the danger we'd inherited. By nightfall, we had a plan: meet the police at a neutral location, hand over the notebook, and let them handle the rest. As we drove to the station, I felt the weight of my mother's love, her warnings guiding us. We weren't just fighting for ourselves. We were fighting for her, for the family she'd tried to protect. The police station was a fortress of fluorescent lights and stale coffee, a stark contrast to the shadows we'd been running from. We sat in a small room, the notebook laid out on the table, its pages a testament to my father's sins and our family's survival. The detective, a grizzled man named Harris, flipped through it, his brow furrowed. "This is big," he said, his voice gruff. "Names like these we've been after some of them for years." I glanced at Ethan, his hands clasped tightly, and Lila, who sat quietly, her eyes red from crying. For the first time, we were a unit, bound not by trust but by necessity. "Will it be enough?" I asked. Harris nodded. "With this and your statements, we can move. But you'll need protection until we do." Protection. The word felt like a lifeline in a cage. We'd traded one danger for another, but at least this one had rules, structure, a chance at an end. As we left the station, a safe house arranged for us, I felt the weight of the past week lift just a fraction. Ethan walked beside me, his shoulders hunched. "Mom," he said, his voice low, "I'm sorry. For everything. The funeral, the lies I didn't know how to fix it." I stopped, turning to him, seeing the boy who'd once clung to me during thunderstorms. "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." Lila lingered behind, her steps hesitant. I turned to her, the anger still there, but softened by the truth we'd uncovered. "Why didn't you tell him?" I asked. "About the men, the deals?" She looked down, her voice barely audible. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I was protecting him." I saw the regret in her eyes, the weight of her choices. She wasn't the enemy I'd made her out to be. She was human, flawed, like me, like Ethan. I reached out, touching her arm. "We fix this together," I said. She nodded, tears spilling over, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of the woman my son had loved. The safe house was small, tucked in a quiet suburb, its walls plain but safe. We spent days there, waiting as the police built their case. Ethan and I talked, really talked for the first time in years. He told me about the pressure of the business, the fights with Lila, the guilt of missing the funeral. I told him about my mother, her strength, her secrets, and how I'd felt alone without him. We cried, laughed, rebuilt something fragile but real. Lila joined us, slowly, her walls coming down as she shared her own fears, her mistakes. We weren't healed, not fully, but we were trying. Weeks later, Harris called. The men from the warehouse were in custody, the notebook's secrets unraveling their network. We were free to go home, to start over. As we packed, I found a photo of my mother in my bag, her smile warm and steady. I showed it to Ethan, and he touched it, his eyes soft. "She'd be proud of you," he said. I smiled, my heart full. "Of us," I corrected. "We'd faced the darkness of our family's past and come out stronger. Not because we were perfect, but because we chose to fight for each other." Back home, I stood in my mother's house, the air lighter now. I kept her photo on the mantle, a reminder of her love, her warnings, her legacy. Ethan and Lila moved forward, their marriage bruised but mending, their business gone but their hope intact. I forgave them, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Family's family, my mother had said, and she was right. We'd lost so much, trust, time, innocence, but we'd gained something too. The courage to face our truths, to rebuild, to love despite the pain. As I locked the door behind me, the sun breaking through the clouds, I felt her with me, guiding us toward a new beginning.